Anti-Semitism. We hear the word over and over. Is it maybe overused? Is that the approach? Or should there be a different approach in how to deal with, be it Jew hatred or just hatred or just rage? Let's hear from Ben Shapiro what he has to say. And on the flip side, I'll share some thoughts.
When people hear the term anti-Semitism, they think that anti-Semitism is just another type of racism. It's just racism against Jews. So basically, it's hatred against Jews, specifically for being ethnically Jewish. But as we've seen, that's actually incomplete. Because you can claim all of the things anti-Semites actually claim. Jews are cliquish or globalists or at the same time both or whatever, without technically hating Jews. And that's the game that is being played right now. This is why you see people who fall under an actual real definition of anti-Semitism, as I've laid it out, who get away with saying that they're fighting anti-Semitism. Right? You hear Ilhan Omar will say this sort of thing. Right? So these overbroad terms used by politicians actually become counterproductive. So, for example, you can say that Israel is the fonthead of all evil without technically hating Jews. You could say that, right? You can even say you have a Jewish friend. That might not really be true, but you can say it, or you can find some Jewish person who actually has no connection with Judaism, and that person can be your stand-in. And this is the excuse that you'll hear from many of the people who say just this kind of stuff. And here's the problem with what Muriel Bowser and AOC and all these people are saying. It leaves open the possibility that so long as you talk about hatred of Israel and that results in people getting killed, it's totally fine. And that's the cover that many people who actually do hate Jews use, because it is in fact an easy cover. Say, oh, it's not about hatred of Jews. It's not about anti-Semitism. It's just about hatred of Israel. That's the game. So instead of focusing on whether people are doing and saying things because they hate Jews, what they feel inside, here's what we should do. We should instead have this conversation in the context of lies. We should be condemning lies. Now, it is quite possible that many of the lies that you're hearing, Israel's committing a genocide, are rooted in actual hatred of Jews. Or maybe it's rooted in some other philosophy. In some cases, we can probably read what people feel on their insides, but sometimes that's not the case, and often it's not even useful. Because people who actually hate Jews often just aren't going to come out and say it. And there's some who will. I point to Nick Fuentes for honesty, but most people don't actually say it, or Kanye West. At least they're honest. Most people may tweet pretty obvious Jew-hating garbage and then delete it, but they can always claim their perspective isn't rooted in hatred of Jews, per se. And all of that offers an easy off-ramp for those who actually build a permission structure for actual evil and murder. Instead of talking about anti-Semitism then, what we actually should do is we should talk about lies and the liars who tell those lies. Like, for example, it is a lie, as we discussed yesterday on the show, that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. It is just a lie. There's not only no data to back it, there's significant data to disprove it. Now, maybe some people are too ignorant to know that it's a lie, and they're just repeating what they hear. Maybe they're just using the word genocide as a stand-in for bad thing. Or maybe they're just dumb. But for those who do know, it's a lie. It was a lie that the Palestinian cause is about a two-state solution. That's always been a lie. The Palestinians will tell you it's a lie. Now, again, maybe some people who are pushing it are too ignorant or hopeful to know that it's a lie, but it is a lie. And lies are bad. And the more they are told, the more dangerous they become. And that's why I think it's actually kind of useless at this point for politicians to talk about anti-Semitism and never the actual lies that matter. Because if we actually had an honest conversation about what actually drove the feelings of shootings like this, lies and more lies, then Muriel Bowser might have to call out the lies of her own side. Then perhaps AOC wouldn't just be able to invoke anti-Semitism and get off scot-free while simultaneously making room for Ilhan Omar. She might actually have to call out the lies of her own.
All right. You know what I feel, even though there's some truth to what he's saying, but in the end, you're preaching to your own constituency, preaching to the converted. And that's what he's doing. Because whoever believes that lies, whoever will believe in lies will continue to believe in lies. You know, you're going to call them out, and what? It's going to change people's minds. I think people's minds are rooted in you know, everybody creates their own reality and their own truths. And, unfortunately, there isn't anything absolute. So I don't believe that to talk about anti-Semitism, you're right, that it really helps and to call it out. I've told the story many a time of how when I was the rabbi at the Chabad house, McGill University, and when I came in through the back door, I got two phone calls from two different newspapers on campus and from the Jewish community saying, "What do you say about the anti-Semitism, the swastikas in the front of the Chabad house downtown in Montreal?" I said, "Wait a second, I didn't see it." I went out. I said, "Yeah, two swastikas were um, on the sidewalk." So I called a friend of mine who is a painter. I said, "Come bring a spray can and let's do something over here." So he came and he made a tic-tac-toe and we played two games of tic-tac-toe. That was it. It wasn't on our property, it was on the sidewalk. And when the newspapers called back, I said, "Leave it alone. They'll just be copycatters if you're going to write about it. And don't give it the time of day." So sometimes to talk about anti-Semitism, you're giving it the time of day that it doesn't deserve. And even to call out the lies, because I believe we live in a world today that people are making up their own truth. People believe that what they feel is true, not that they are feeling it, but it's the truth because that's how I feel. You can't talk to that. So what are we left with? What we're left with is we need to inspire people to live a more inspired life. We need to help people to be a light themselves, to be a more inspired, godly life, to actually introduce the G word into the conversation, the G word into schools, God. That there is an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and that we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, not to our community merely, but to God. We have a responsibility. So we can't play victimhood. We can't do that. And sometimes with using anti-Semitism, Jewish people are using that as a victimhood. Not to say we're not a victim to some people that are hateful. That's true, but let's not go there. First of all, that's giving them fuel for the fire. Oh, look at the anti-Semitism, swastikas. It's giving them a limelight. Don't do that. Instead, live an inspired life that is one that is you're responsible for. So any mishap in your life, instead of pointing a finger to society and how society is to blame for all the ills, and now let's protest. Make your life better, make your family life better, and then go to the community. Beautify yourself. Make yourself a beautiful human being that's loving and caring and goodness, that senses goodness in others and is trying to change the world for good in a positive way. Do that for within you, with others. Do that for your family. Do that for your community. Protest. Call out the lies, anti-Semitism. Just going in circles with it. Do a mitzvah. Do something kind, acts of loving kindness, a godly act. We do that. That will be the answer. Now, sometimes I don't want to say that sometimes you need to call out the evil and call out the lies. But you know what that gets? That just gets more attention and you get more people because people are in a rage and they want, so they rage from the right side and they'll rage from the left side of politics. All you do is get those, in a rage to being more in a rage. I'm right, my side's right, and you're wrong. And it's so, Ben, there's some truth to what you're saying, but in the end, yeah, maybe it gets you a lot of clicks, and maybe it makes money, but doesn't make necessarily a better world just to call it out. Live an inspired life. That's what you talk about is your inspired life. about goodness and kindness. That's going to change the world for good.